Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the Noon News from Montana's news leader.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on your MTN Statewide News this Friday. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Well, we have breaking news this noon. A suspect charged with shooting 4 people in March 2019, including Montana Highway Patrol Trooper Wade Palmer, has changed his plea. 2 of his victims died that night, Jonathan Birch pleaded guilty to several charges this morning, including deliberate homicide in Missoula District Court. Now, Birch is charged with 2 separate shootings on the same night that killed 2 people and critically wounded 2 others, including Trooper Palmer. In the first attack, Birch killed Shelley Hayes and wounded Casey Blanchard and his mother Julie off Expressway Boulevard in Missoula. Several hours later, Birch ambushed Trooper Palmer, shooting him several times in the head, leaving Palmer with a traumatic brain injury. Casey's mother, Julie Blanchard, died 3 months later from complications of multiple gunshot wounds. We'll have more on that tonight on your local MTN station. Well, as positive cases rise today, the state reports another COVID-19 related death in Montana, bringing Montana's total to 22. State health officials attribute the death to a case connected to Rosebud County. 29 new cases are reported today, 218 active cases total. Gallatin, Yellowstone, and Bighorn counties each have 34 active cases today. Well, Yellowstone County health authorities are asking residents for vigilance as they say resources for contact tracing are getting stressed. The county will offer a second free testing event on Saturday, July 11th. It will take place in the upper parking lot of Metro Park from 9 until noon. Results from people tested last weekend are not yet known. Well, more than half of the U.S. states are seeing an increase in COVID-19 cases. In hard-hit Texas, some bars have been ordered to close as officials fear apocalyptic surges. Other states seeing huge spikes include Arizona, Florida, and Oklahoma. Earlier this morning, the White House Coronavirus Task Force held a public briefing, the first in almost 2 months. Vice President Mike Pence announced he will travel to some of the hard-hit states next week. Dr. Anthony Fauci also says the White House Coronavirus Task Force is seriously considering pool testing for COVID-19. This way, you can test a group of 25 people with one test rather than 25 separate diagnostic tests. Well, the Blackfeet Tribal Council is closing the eastern border of Glacier National Park into the Blackfeet Reservation for the remainder of the 2020 season. According to Blackfeet COVID-19 Incident Command, the closure of the border is to protect the residents of the Blackfeet Nation. Now, each year, tourists and locals flock to Montana to fly fish. It's a $7 billion industry for the state, now hit hard by COVID restrictions. When out-of-state travelers were deterred from the Treasure State, local guides and businesses suffered. Hundreds of guided fishing tours canceled since March have driven independent contractors to unemployment. But on the brighter side, if there's one thing that's kept fly fishing afloat these past few months, it's the dedicated Montanans who just can't stay out of the water. Well, it is a beautiful day outside. Ed McIntosh joins us now to tell us how long we get to stay out there.
Well, it depends. Now, see, I want to go all the way around the globe to show you because it's going to be very dusty.
Ooh.
For some people. Let's go ahead. This is well up into the atmosphere, and this is something that happens on a regular basis, but it's really interesting when it really starts to pick up. A cloud of dust moving all the way from the Sahara Desert. Now watch as it kind of moves all the way across the Atlantic and starts to affect areas even into the southern portion of the country. Now this will typically happen several times out of the year, but this is particularly strong right now. I want to change the view because you can see how far that dust cloud goes. This is actually going to inhibit hurricanes during this season, but it also adds sand even into the Caribbean, the beaches there, and adds nutrients into the Amazon rainforest. Come back, take a look at the forecast a little bit.
All right, thanks so much, Ed. Well, after 59 years and a brutal COVID-19 shutdown, a Great Falls business is closing its doors. Cartwheel Casino and Liquor Store closed March 19th and reopened under restrictions on May 4th. But as patrons return to a new normal, owner Joe McKinney says it will be without his store due to the pandemic. He will be working to reduce inventory over the next few days before closing doors. Customers will find a commemorative sticker on each bottle highlighting the store's 59 years in business. In Kalispell, an Arizona man is charged with killing a person by driving drunk through the victim's home. 20-year-old Thomas Lefevre is charged with vehicular homicide while under the influence. He's facing facing 30 years in prison for the crime. On Saturday, 59-year-old Robert Meyer was asleep in his room when a vehicle came crashing through his wall, striking and killing him. Lefevre's bond is set at $500,000. Well, nicer weather, more visitors, and more in-state travel contribute each year to an increase in fatal crashes. Montana Highway Patrol says most fatal accidents can be linked to speeding. There have been 80 deaths on Montana highways this year alone, but troopers warn people should still follow 3 important safety measures within city limits.
The big 3 has never really changed. We don't want you driving impaired. We don't want you to exceed the speed limit, and we do want you wearing your seatbelt. With those 3 things, I would say 80% of the fatality crashes I investigate would not have resulted in a fatality crash. So those are the big 3 things that we really always want to remind drivers of.
And another tip, troopers say you should not swerve to avoid animals on the roadway, as many accidents are caused by overcorrecting. Well, a Browning Boxing Club will be featured on national television next week. MTN's Tom Wiley caught up with the club's founder, who hopes the exposure can help send a message.
In 2003, Frankie Kipp started the Blackfeet Nation Boxing Club in Browning for a simple reason: to teach youth on the reservation, especially women and young girls, to defend themselves.
I started seeing girls getting bullied. Yes, they were coming up to me, they were getting bullied, and we had actually had a couple in their 20s and stuff wanting to learn how to take up for themselves because they were getting abused or something or other. We start hearing about young ladies being taken from Indian country, and so I started training my daughter. If something happens, at least you're going to know how to fight for your life.
Since starting the club, Kipp has trained over 500 boxers on the reservation.
Some of the girls that come into the boxing club have real low self-esteem, and the confidence that they get from boxing is just phenomenal.
And next week, Kipp and his pupils will be featured on a big stage.
I started thinking, how can we keep these girls from putting themselves in harm's way? The only answer was this club.
The club will be featured in a documentary called Blackfeet Boxing, Not Invisible, set to air Tuesday on ESPN.
It was emotional in the sense that, I was a probation officer prior, and I put a lot of things upstairs in my head, unpleasant things, When I was doing this, I talked to a lot of kids out of suicide. The youngest 8 years old wanting to take their lives, And the documentary, it brought a lot of memories back up, There was a few that were real unpleasant about maybe break down during the interview, because
Blackfeet Boxing is a film about fighting for respect, identity, and acknowledgement. This film details the story of Ashley Loring Heavy Runner and other missing and murdered Indigenous women, and Kipp hopes the large audience will help spread awareness to the silent epidemic.
I think so. I think it should be awareness, not just on our reservation, but right now with most of the Indian nations, this is what's happening. People are coming up, girls are coming up missing. We have unsolved murders. It's a trip. Some of the things that we see, I do think that it's going to bring up some awareness with that.
Tom Wiley, MTN News.
All right, thanks so much, Tom. Well, ahead on the noon news, for college students, hands-on learning is priceless, and it all changed because of coronavirus, but we'll tell you about our local PA who says it's different. Time now is 12:08, but first, Ed's in next with your statewide weather forecast.